year, we have actually invited Wang, the Secretary General of International Hydrogen Fuel Cell Association. And last year, her presentation was very well received by the audience. And this year, that's why we have invited Ms. Wang again onto this stage. We'll be talking again about the global hydrogen industry and the platinum demand from her industry perspective. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a great pleasure to be invited to Shanghai Platinum Week and to talk about the prospect of a global hydrogen industry and the demand for platinum. So I would like to approach this topic from these three aspects. First of all, some backgrounds and context. And secondly, I will talk about the whole value chain of hydrogen power. In the third part, I will be talking about the application of PGM in hydrogen power industry. Actually, having heard the speakers this morning, I can capture buzzword, which is hydrogen power. Hydrogen power indeed has provided a large market for the application of PGM. So that's why I'm going to focus my presentation on this point as well. And first, before I start, I'd like to talk about my organization, the International Hydrogen Fuel Cell Association. We were just approved by the central government. We are an international association. We cover the companies in the fuel cells, in the energy sector, in the fuel cell vehicles, as well as other segments under hydrogen industry. So the goal and commitment for us is to push the commercialization of a hydrogen fuel cell. I'd also like to thank the organizer for giving me this opportunity to share my insights and my thinking about the hydrogen industry. Well, the significance of hydrogen power is that it is environmental friendly and it is also a very promising solution to reach carbon zero. We can almost say it is not possible to realize carbon zero without the use of hydrogen power. Hydrogen power can be used in many areas, in power, industry, transport, buildings. And these sectors, it's easy to reduce the carbon emission in these major sectors. As we have heard from the speakers, the developing hydrogen energy has become a consensus of the world. We have also done a research. We found over 30 countries has designed their own strategy and plans to develop hydrogen power, and their main focus will be on the building the industry chain of green hydrogen, and they are also pushing the development of the hydrogen fuel cells. On this map, you are able to see all the countries who are very friendly and who are very encouraging the development of hydrogen power. Many organizations has done a forecast in the hydrogen power demand. By January this year, many countries have announced major green hydrogen project, and the number amounted to over 1,000. And yesterday we heard the forecast from a French bank that in the future, the direct investment towards the hydrogen power industry will amount to 320 billion US dollars. And by the 2030, the demand for the hydrogen will be over 100 million metric tons. So this is a good news for all of us who are working in the PGM industry. Then let's look at the hydrogen industry chain. This is a very long industry chain. If we regard the hydrogen generation as the upper stream, then in the middle stream will mostly be the storage and the transportation, and on the lower stream are the applications in the industry, transportation and storage. So today, because of the constraint of time, I'm going to only focus on the areas of major concerns. So the upper stream concerns the green hydrogen. So only when we solve the renewable source issue of the hydrogen generation are we able to achieve this clean energy prospect. So from this chart, you are able to see that how many countries has made investment in how many projects. For example, and it's pretty clear that Europe is leading the way in green hydrogen investment with over 400 projects and over 149 companies working on it. And China, as well as Asia, is also making large investments in this regard as well. So to generate hydrogen, electrolyzer is the crucial equipment. By 2022, each year the deployment of electrolyzer is increasing year by year. Now the CAGR can be over 30% in the past few years. And there are a few technological pathways. One is AWE, another is PEM. So in these two pathways, the market share is growing year by year. So AWE takes 60% of the market and PEM is following suit. In China, most of our solution is AEM or the alkaline electrolyzer. And Europe, in the European market, the PEM takes a dominant role with over 60% of the market share. So there are some different pathways. One is the alkaline electrolyzer, but you would realize that if the alkaline electrolyzer use a PGM, then the production will increase largely. But on the other hand, the cost will be driven up. So the industry is all doing this calculation and trying to find the sweet spot of the investment. While there are other two pathways, which is still in the lab stage. Then if we move on to the middle stream, then we will be looking at the storage and transportation. So far, the major solution of storage is gaseous hydrogen and liquid hydrogen, but there are other ways like the inorganic mass hydrogen storage. So the third pathway is still under exploration. Most of the storage is still gaseous hydrogen, but if it's for industrial use, then liquid storage also takes considerable market share. And if we go down to the downstream, there are many applications in the power, for example, industry, transportation, and building as well. You would have questioned why building would need hydrogen. It takes power to construct a building, and the operation of a building takes power as well. I will give you a few typical cases so that you can have a perspective. In Japan, has a shortage of the domestic energy reserve, so they are pretty advanced in an SOSC, and the hydrogen generation, such as the SOSC pathway is adopted even by households. The storage of the hydrogen is also in the cutting-edge stage in Japan as well. And in Shandong province, the government is also leading the way of the fuel cell and hydrogen power source, namely to use hydrogen to do the storage as well as providing power for the households and buildings. And this is actually the very first pilot project that use hydrogen into the household power system. The reason why we are placing our attention to hydrogen is that it is a very promising energy source. And it involves many players in the industry. In transportation, for example, it can involve the common individuals like everyone here. In terms of rail transit, people are also making explorations in using hydrogen-powered trains and rail transportation in the flight and aviation, as that is the same thing, same trend, and shipping as well. In Wuhan and Dalian, the institutes are making such exploration, but the technology is not mature yet. The most mature application is still in vehicles. So far, there is already 70,000 on hydrogen fuel cell cars. This is still a pretty low number. But if you look back at the development of NEV cars, then you would also see that it started from thousands to hundreds of thousands and to the millions, as we can see now. If you overlap the trend of the NEV cars with the fuel cell cars, then you can see that the trend basically is aligned, except that the hydrogen fuel cells is still at the starting stage. Well, the fuel cell companies is mostly in China and in Japan. Toyota and Hyundai and Honda are all launching their own hydrogen fuel cell cars, and people regard the hydrogen as a very promising direction for an EV as well. In China, some OEMs are making the same attempts, and the overseas companies like the Audi and BMW, they have their plan in hydrogen fuel cells as well. So with these efforts from the business, I believe that the fuel cell will also enter the fast track in the future. Actually, and I want to show you that Toyota has just released their goal and strategy for 2023 for the future hydrogen energy. Toyota has invested a lot in the past in the hydrogen fuel cell, and their product has evolved many generations. And their plans is that by 2030, they are going to sell over 100,000 fuel cell cars, and most of them commercial cars. So this plan was just released by Toyota, but we can already see the determination of Toyota in developing hydrogen fuel cells. The technology in the hydrogen fuel cells will also increase dramatically, while the cost will be reduced significantly as well. The fuel cell cars of Toyota is already available in the market. The cost is about 700,000 RMB, pretty expensive. But in the future, if can be tuned down, and it is still a very promising product. You already know that China has the largest ownership of cars. So if the Chinese government and the Chinese business has this determination to move towards hydrogen fuel cell cars, then there will be a very big market. So now in Shanghai, in Jing-Jin-Ji, Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei, as well as in the Pearl River Delta, there are some city clusters that will take the pilot project for hydrogen cars. This is one good sign. In terms of the infrastructure in China, there is over 300 hydrogen charging station, which is the number one in the world in terms of the quantity. Well, since sitting here are all the leaders and experts in PGM, so I would also like to share my prediction of PGM.
You might be concerned with how PGMs are used. So this chart gives you an overview of where PGMs are used in the hydrogen economy. As you can see, for PEM, platinum and radium are used on the anode and cathode. The second is a PEM fuel cell battery, and also fuel cell catalyst relies upon PGM. So that all these represent important applications. We also made a forecast as fuel cell vehicles and fuel cells have just started their growth. Different institutions have different forecasts. We just did a summary of all the forecasts by various institutions. According to PEM, it is expected by 2030 globally, PEM electrolyzers total demand is expected to reach 80 GW, and China currently faces immature technology and high cost. So China's PEM electrolyzer only accounts for around 20% of the global total. According to ARENA's data, currently electrolyzers loading of platinum and iridium in terms of its catalyst are 0.5 gram per kilowatt and 1.3 gram per kilowatt respectively. And by 2030, global demand for iridium and platinum will be 32 and 8 tons respectively. In addition to that, as you know that with global attention to fuel cell vehicles, there will be a lot of demand coming from this sector for platinum. According to data, well, this is rather conservative as 0.125 microgram per liter. That's rather conservative. That figure is 2030 platinum loading. That's given by America DOE. But we did our calculation, and we think that the number 0.125 gram per kilowatt is very low and very conservative for light-duty vehicles. So according to our forecast, we think that by 2030, fuel cell vehicle ownership will reach between 4 million to 14 million. with light-duty vehicle and heavy-duty vehicle accounting for 80% and 20% respectively. So we'll expect by 2030, demand for platinum from fuel cell vehicles globally will be around 105 tons to 368 tons. We think that fuel cell vehicle will be a very important industry, and there is general consensus that will be a trillion RMB market. So the market size will be tremendous. And in terms of water electrolysis and in terms of fuel cell, demand for PGM will keep increasing and the size will go up and up. So we hope that the hydrogen and fuel cell industry will have more communications with the PGM industry so that we have share of information and data. Because I think our industry indeed has urgent demand for PGM, and the platinum for us is indispensable and is irreplaceable. So I really look forward to more exchanges with your industry. Thank you very much.